Welcome to the WrestleTalk News, I'm Pete Quinnell. Today's top story is actually one we spoke about on Wednesday's episode of the news, but there's more now. If you recall, we were talking about this Monday's episode of Raw and how the first 30 minutes of the show was seemingly changed last minute by Vince McMahon, cutting out the challenge to Seth Rollins' World Heavyweight Championship and instead being replaced with a Finn Balor beatdown. If you were watching then, do you remember when I said, what was the original plan before Vince got his hands on it? Considering that this led to The Miz coming down and offering his own challenge that was answered by a returning Tommaso Ciampa, could it have been that Ciampa was supposed to return to challenge Rollins and that's what got pulled? And then, do you remember when I said, what was scrapped? We'll never know. Unless we find out, then we will. And now, we know! And it turns out, I'm a genius, and absolutely nobody could have predicted what I predicted, and I'm a detective mastermind, and you should all praise me. Because Fightful Select are reporting that Tommaso Ciampa was originally supposed to answer Seth's open challenge, and that's what Vince McMahon pulled. The match was reportedly set to get a ton of time, and you may be thinking that Vince canned the match so he could protect Ciampa in his first match back and not have him take a loss. But you'd be wrong, wouldn't you? Because Select also reports that the match would have had a non-finish. And the people involved in all this reportedly didn't take the changes well, with the report noting that those around the match were clearly frustrated by the change. Which makes a lot of sense, honestly. If Ciampa was going to come back, put on a banger of a match against Rollins with loads of time and look better for it coming out of it, solidifying him at a higher level on the card than he was when he left, and instead he came back to beat up The Miz, I'd be annoyed too. And if I was Seth, I'd be annoyed, not having the chance to put on that great caliber of match that he so clearly wants to provide to the fans at every opportunity. And with Vince making frustrating changes backstage, once again focus has been drawn to the influence Vince has over shows, with questions raised about his authority, who's really in charge, etc. And Ricochet has shined some light on his experience with it, saying in an interview with Sporf, Vince is still involved and Vince is still talked to. He's still someone that everyone looks to, especially with creative. So he's got his fingers in everything too. His fingers in everything. Ew. Now, heading to AEW, this next story contains spoilers for tonight's episode of Rampage, so if you don't want to know, skip ahead using the chapters and timestamps in the description and the pinned comment. Ready? Because I'm going to talk about it now. Here come the spoilers. Here they are, without any delay, right now. From this moment on, this will be the moment. On Rampage, AEW saw the return of John Morrison, who was last seen in the Owen Hart Cup last year. He returned as a heel, attacking the Acclaimed and Daddy Ass, and PW Insider reports that Morrison has actually signed with AEW now, and even better, he's got a new ring name. Now, what do you think it's going to be? Johnny Elite? John Dynamite? John Collision? Nope, it's much worse, or better, depending on your viewpoint, as they also report that his ring name will be Johnny Television, or Johnny TV. No comment, I'm not going to say what I think of it. I've got a great poker face, you'll never be able to tell. But it seems AEW has its one-in, one-out policy, as Fuego del Sol announced that he would be departing AEW and would be accepting bookings elsewhere. Fuego won his contract with AEW on the first episode of Rampage, with Sammy Guevara handing it to him. Do you remember? Wait, but contracts are usually for like full years amounts of time, whether it be for 1, 2, or more years. And that first episode of Rampage was in August, and he's saying he's a free agent as of July 1st. So does that mean he'd already signed with AEW before he was handed his contract on TV? Do you mean to tell me that that was a work? I've never felt so betrayed. There's updates on a few members of the AEW roster ahead of Forbidden Door this weekend, which, by the way, looks absolutely stacked. I'm very excited. One of the matches I'm most excited for is Bryan Danielson versus Kazuchika Okada, because that just sounds oh so tasty. But there's a little asterisk next to that match now, as Fightful Select is reporting that Bryan Danielson has been banged up as of late, and he had some spots pulled from the Anarchy in the Arena match at Double or Nothing because of that. Danielson has instead been primarily providing commentary for Blackpool Combat Club matches, and hasn't been involved in a number of the ensuing brawls. He also seems to be transitioning into more of a backstage role, as he's also reportedly been heavily involved in creative for the first several weeks of AEW Collision. And you know, good for him. I hope he's taking his time to recover properly, because the wrestling world is better with him in it. And if he wrestles less frequently but just puts on dream matches when he does and works on creative the rest of the time, I'm pretty okay with that. One of the other matches from Forbidden Door that actually raised some eyebrows upon the announcement was Sonata defending his IWGP Heavyweight Championship against Jack Perry. Not that people don't like Jungle Boy or anything, but just that it seems there could have been some other wrestlers higher up the card that would have potentially made that spot feel a bit bigger. Sonata has even said since then that he has no knowledge of Jack Perry at all when speaking with Tokyo Sports, saying, "I have no knowledge of Jack Perry." It's sad to see someone like that challenge for the IWGP. Is an open challenge really that easy to decide? Before then saying that it was a bigger prize in the AEW Championship and should be treated as such. And while the match, I'm sure, will be great, what comes after may be even more interesting. Dave Meltzer mentioned on Wrestling Observer Radio that AEW's plan is to turn Jungle Boy heel. Whether that be at Forbidden Door or otherwise remains to be seen. But whether this is a report or just conjecture based on what's been happening on screen lately is unclear. Regardless, it seems quite likely that we could be seeing the last vestments of Jungle Boy being stripped away as the newly heel Jack Perry is born. That's what I do anyway. And we have an update on Jeff Hardy as well, who was on the losing end of a match against the Guns on Dynamite, and he and Matt were then attacked by Bullet Club Gold after the match. This was done to write Jeff off of TV, according to Fightful Select, as he will be unable to join them for their tour in Canada due to his previous arrests. AEW has 8 dates lined up for Canada, and their next show in the States is on July 19th, with Dynamite in Boston. As we spoke about in yesterday's news, the Collision premiere didn't do too bad, did it? Averaging at around 816,000 viewers, the primetime Saturday show got off to a seemingly strong start, but was it enough for those big, scary corporate Warner execs? Yes. Yes, it was. According to PW Insider, sources within WBD were said to be thrilled with Collision's strong debut numbers, a show that was obviously aided by the return of CM Punk. And those good vibes seemingly rolled into this week's Dynamite, as that show too rode that Pepsi Phil wave to a solid 902,000 viewers, up from the week before's 832,000. The show also scored a .33 in the 18-49 demo, up from .3 on last Wednesday. Not only are WBD sure to be thrilled with this upward momentum, but Tony Khan couldn't hold his own excitement either, responding to PW Torch's Wade Keller, who posted the numbers saying, "LFG, Wade," which I believe stands for "Look, Frankly Good" ratings. And that wasn't all Khan had to say, as yesterday saw a good old Tony Khan pre-pay-per-view press conference, try saying that 5 times fast, ahead of Sunday's Forbidden Door. Now, Khan had a fair bit to say, and as always, a few things not to say, so let me give you the cliff notes. Firstly, sticking with WBD, Khan was asked by Dave Meltzer about CM Punk's "One Bill Phil" line from his promo on Collision last week, something that according to Punk is what WBD CEO David Zaslav refers to him as. While many assumed the line was in relation to AEW having a $1 billion deal with WBD, Khan said that wasn't accurate, with him instead revealing he just thought it would be cool to have a top star mention the man at the top of the TV company in a similar way to when Ted Turner was mentioned on WCW, you big mark. He also felt the line was appropriate given that it was Zaslav that came up with the idea for Collision. While Saturday night may be the Punk show in all but name, Tony did clear one thing up at the presser: CM Punk does in fact not run AEW. Yes, the infamous "I'm trying to run a business" line from Punk at the All Out presser was brought up by David Bixenspan, which forced Khan to clear the air. Khan called the line a colloquialism, saying Punk is invested in growing the company's bottom line and box office business. However, Khan is the man in charge. Khan went even further to hammer this home, messaging Bixenspan to reiterate that no, Punk 100% does not have an ownership stake in AEW. So there you have it, Punk doesn't secretly own AEW confirmed. Last note on Punk, Khan also did what he does and refused to comment on the supposedly once planned Kenta vs Punk match at Forbidden Door, instead hyping up his actual match against Satoshi Kojima. Tony also shot down Ariel Helwani's report from the MMA Hour that he and his father Shad Khan were looking to purchase MMA promotion Bellator. Tony said he doesn't know who he would even talk to about making a deal like that happen, before throwing some shade on known mortal enemy Helwani, saying, "That is completely inaccurate, but that's Ariel Helwani for you." And finally, as has become tradition for Tony at these presses, he was quizzed about the possibility of bringing Goldberg into the company for a final run, perhaps to be Sting and Darby's partner at Forbidden Door. However, according to SRS, Khan kiboshed that idea and only stated again that he'd had nice conversations with Goldberg about AEW. Enjoys nice conversations. And speaking of enjoying nice things with Money in the Bank next weekend, why not check out Luca and Ollie's predictions for the show with their 3 count? Here's a clip.
Mid-match commentary.
He's in the Money in the Bank briefcase.
I know, but he can
I see.
I'm thinking Mick Foley. I'm thinking King of the Mountain.
It wasn't getting the man. It was
It was one of them.
It was the
It was the ultimate
sacrifice match.
sacrifice.